We're going to get started. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. What a joyous celebration this is going to be. I'm Nikki Jones, she, hers, professor and chair of the Department of African American Studies and African Diaspora Studies here at UC Berkeley. And it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you here to celebrate the unveiling of the Black Activist Elders Oral History Project. And thank you to the Ethnic Studies Library, which will house the collection, and to Barbara Montano as well for helping to organize the event. Yes, people. I'm very excited about this event. I've been watching the progress over the last several years. The project received support from the department's Abolition Democracy Initiative and was expertly led from the beginning to the end by Professor Ula Taylor. And when you look around, and I was listening to people chatting and talking and laughing, you know that it's Professor Taylor's spirit bringing this community into the room, and I'm so grateful. Also grateful to the project team lead and Berkeley J School alum, and watch Corey's rise as a journalist, Corey Antonio Rose. And an outstanding team of undergrads. I know that Professor Taylor will say more about the project in a moment, but I do again want to say thank you to Professor Taylor and your entire team for your work on this project, for solidifying the historical record, and for preserving the stories that in many ways hold the answers to so many of the questions and challenges and struggles we confront today. There is so much wisdom and light in this room, and I am so grateful. Thank you. Before I turn it over to Professor Taylor, I want to acknowledge that the campus of UC Berkeley is sited on the territory of Huchun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone, the successors of the historic and sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. We recognize that every member of the Berkeley community has and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1868. We acknowledge and pay respect to Muwekma Ohlone ancestors, peoples today, and the Muwekma Ohlone future to come. One way to make concrete this acknowledgement is through the payment of Shumi land tax, a material way for non-Indigenous people living in the East Bay to participate in the rematriation of land to Indigenous people. With this in mind, the Department of African American Studies began a practice of giving Shumi land tax to the Indigenous women-led Sogoreate Land Trust, an urban land trust founded in 2012 with the goals of returning traditionally Chochenyo and Karkan lands in the San Francisco Bay Area to Indigenous stewardship and cultivating more active reciprocal relationships with the land. And you can learn more about their work by visiting their website. And now on to the celebration. Let me turn the program over to the person who needs no introduction here on this campus, the hardest working woman on campus, and I'm pretty sure the most beloved, Professor Ula Taylor.
Thank you so much, Professor Jones. We are here today because of the Department of Black Studies leadership in Professor Jones. In 2021, Professor Jones put the university on blast for its lack of support to the department and the larger Black community by bringing colleagues together to write a vision document that we named the Abolition Democracy Initiative. The Abolition Democracy Initiative was well conceived, which is why the university was pressed to say yes to it. It had many moving parts, one of which was to support the collection of oral interviews, to archive the stories of our activist elders living in the Bay Area. As a historian who fully understands the value of oral histories, I was happy to take the lead on the project. The Abolition Democracy Initiative, Activist Elders Audio Archive Project, is what has brought all of us here today. We wanted this to be an intergenerational activity between undergraduate students and activist elders. With the assistance of Melissa Charles from the Fannie Lou Hamer Center, we began by advertising for 4 undergraduate interns. Each intern would receive a small stipend and would be trained to conduct interviews, hone their skills as storytellers, produce compelling interviews, and to create a historical archive. To our surprise, many students applied, and after a careful selection that included some expertise about the African American freedom movement and a passion for engaging with others, and this was very, very important to me, because a lot of times we have a lot of knowledge, but we are not in the position to be generous and be willing to listen to our elders. So it was very important to me that they were passionate, engaging people. And in the end, we selected 5 and not 4 students because the pool was so strong. I knew that I needed technological help to make this happen. Those of you who know me well, particularly Miss Fran Bill sitting over here, know that I still have a flip phone. So you know I really did need help. I quickly shifted to the School of Journalism to identify a graduate student there. After listening to Corey Antonio Rose's podcast about Mr. Rodney Barnett, I knew I needed him on our team, and I was so glad that Corey said yes. Corey Antonio Rose is an audio reporter and producer from Jacksonville, Florida. His work explores the intersection of public health, policy, and culture. And he's produced content for KQED, KALW, NPR, and the Poynter Institute. He is a Facebook Journalism Project Scholar, a graduate of the University of California Graduate School of Journalism, and now works as a producer for National Public Radio. He produced the official companion podcast to the Netflix film Rustin, and is the co-chair of the National Association of Black Journalists LGBTQ Task Force. Please join me in welcoming Corey Antonio Rose.
What's up, y'all? So good to see so many smiling faces this afternoon. My name is Corey Antonio Rose. I am a journalist, producer, podcast host here, living in the Bay from Jacksonville. So I guess to start, I was just so excited to hear that there was an oral history project going on at Berkeley because, you know, I want us all to just take a moment and think back to maybe a kitchen or a dining room table or a living room floor that maybe you sat on and you heard a story about somebody who you may have never met, but may have came before you in your family line, or came before you in your profession, and the way those conversations have always had the potential to change trajectories for people. And so when we think about an archive and the purpose of and the importance of an archive, what it does is, you know, for curious minds down the road, 40 years, 50 years, who are interested in how we thought about things or how people before us thought about things, they have somewhere to go. As somebody who lives at the intersection of Black and queer, it's often very difficult to find archive material that is both written and substantiated, and you know, a lot of it is just piecemeal. It's out there, you gotta go talk to folks, and a lot of people, you know, I consider myself one of those brave people who can take that step and talk to people, but so many people can't, and so many people don't have that access just by way of where they live. And so it's so important for us to take these stories that often get passed around, you know, from kitchen table to kitchen table, and put them somewhere in an institution like this, so that way, it has a sort of like academic and intellectual validity. There's a paper trail that people can go back. So that way, you know, when they say, oh, Joe Schmo was the first person who did this, it's like, actually, the archive says. Actually, when we did these oral interviews, you know, our lovely elder activists were able to testify to the truth of what actually happened. Another thing that I saw come across through this archive that I hadn't really thought about until we were sitting with all of the interviews in front of us was just how connected the spirit of activism is, and the idea of coalition building. I'm currently researching Queen Mother Audley Moore, who is sort of seen as the mother. Oh, the mother of the modern reparations movement. And one thing that was so important to her story was the idea of coalition building and hopping from one movement to another movement to another movement and sowing these ideas and watching sort of more radical ideas end up in less radical organizations, and then the change that comes from that. And one thing I saw in this archive is just how fluid that idea of moving from women's liberation to public health to, Black liberation and all these different types of freedom work. They really, string together, not just because people have multiple interests, but because these people are friends. They know each other. And y'all come up in each other's archives. So I do hope y'all take the time to listen, because it was very interesting to hear some of the ties. It's the importance of the archive. And, so one thing as far as our approach to these interviews, I was so blessed to be working with these 5 amazing students. Nikki Bayat, who is not here with us today. Mela Seum, who is over here. Come show yourself. Yeah. Intros. Mela Seum. Isabel Vos Broughton. Oh, that's a lot louder. And Mariah Stennis. And then our last elder activist was Alicia Hager, who could not join us today. So, if you all could say a couple words about the people you interviewed, I'd love for that.
Okay.
Yes. We'll do the interview, but who you interviewed and what you interviewed them about.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Mela. So I had the pleasure of interviewing both Rodney Barnett and Margaret Gordon. Miss Margaret Gordon. Thank you. And I think, as we've kind of mentioned, since this is an oral history, we had the opportunity to ask them about kind of all the different parts of their lives and their various advocacies in different organizations and movements. For Miss Margaret Gordon, I think a large part of that had to do with environmental justice, especially here in the Bay Area. And for Rodney Barnett, I think it spanned across quite a few different movements across his lifetime, including some of his time was spent in the Black Panther movement, also with labor organizing, and he also had a lot to do with various advocacy here in the Bay with LGBTQ+ communities. Thank you.
Hey y'all, I hope everyone's having a beautiful day. I'm so happy to be here. But I had the opportunity to interview Dr. James Jimmy Garrett here, and he's actually the first founder of a BSU across the nation at SF State, as well as did many, many other things. I think one that really stood out to me was his journey in connecting with student athletes on campus and the widespread advocacy that had, and that's just something that I really connected with. And then I also had the opportunity to interview Miss Melanie Tervalone, and oh, hey love, oh my gosh, I didn't even see you. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I had different hair, I had locks, yeah. I know, we just switched it all up. I'm so sorry, y'all. Dr. Tervalone, I'm so sorry. No, let me give you all your respect. I'm so sorry. Dr. Melanie Tervalone, come on. And she just did a lot of amazing work, specifically at the Children's Hospital in Oakland around racial justice in the medical system, and just the impact that had building cohorts to be educated with one another and have conversations and really make sure that these spaces are equitable. And then I also had the opportunity to interview Phil Gardner, who has an interesting connection with Dr. Tervalone, but you will hear that hopefully in the interviews once you listen. But they also just did a lot of organizing throughout the Bay Area, connection with UCLA specifically, and their connection with the Panthers, as well as other organizing movements. I feel like I'm talking a lot now, so I'm gonna step back, but thank you guys.
Hey y'all. So again, my name is Mariah, and I had the honor to interview Dr. Vicki Alexander, Dr. Tolbert Small, and Donald Foster. I think in all of my interviews, I was really inspired, and also just to like see their thought process and a lot of the activism they did. Specifically, Dr. Tolbert Small, it was really, really, really influential to be interviewing him because he did a lot of work with the Black Panther Party. And so he gave me a lot of insight specifically on like the thought process and the minds of people in the party, specifically like when COINTELPRO was going on. And I think it was really influential to be able to like listen to someone talk about like their firsthand accounts of things like this, because you read about it in books, you hear about it in classes, but to actually hear from someone who experienced it and was involved in it, I think is really amazing. Donald Foster, he started Afro House here at UC Berkeley, and I think that's really also amazing because before that, the student cooperatives didn't have any identity-based housing for Black students. And he also did a whole bunch of activism specifically with like radio shows. He was even like discharged from the war because he was like doing a lot of activism with the radio. And so it was just really influential because you see like how people have done different types of activism throughout their lives. And then Dr. Vicki Alexander, she actually started Healthy Black Families, organization here in Berkeley. And so I'm not someone who specifically like has a interest in public health, but like interviewing her and hearing about like the Black female like pregnancy mortality rate, like that was like super influential. And also all the work that she did, thinking about like how disparities today are similar as they were back then, but all of the progress that she made and like shaping the lives and influencing the lives of Black women. So yeah, thank you.
Thank y'all so much. And then I also wanted to highlight the work of Nikki Bayat, who interviewed Phil Hutchings about his work in student activism, Linda Burnham on her work in women's rights, and Heber El Dreyer on his work in anti-apartheid and anti-war movements. And then lastly, there's also our last elder researcher, Alicia Hager, who interviewed Walter Turner about his time being the host of Pacifica Radio's Africa Today, and Daphne Muse about her letter writing and archiving and work in freedom movements. And Fran Beal about her work as well in women's rights. So I want to talk about a North Star and what a North Star is. A North Star is basically our guiding light into these interviews. When you're looking at, faced with interviewing somebody you've never met, all you have is what's written about them and what you've heard about them. And so a North Star is what we use to sort of take all of that information and condense it down into a single question that we have about the person we're interviewing. So yeah, I guess I want to ask y'all about how it was to come up with a North Star. I guess specifically, how was it coming into the archive and seeing like some people had lots of information written about them and then some people had almost nothing? And then that's for anybody.
Yeah, so I think in terms of kind of our approach to creating the North Star and just in general, like I think our approach to these interviews and oral histories came from kind of a bottom-up perspective, and by that I mean looking at all of the kind of previous work, whether that was interviews, articles, and just any other kind of involvement or work that these elders had done before, and looking at that and using that and finding out kind of, at least from what was available. I know Corey mentioned that sometimes there's a wealth of information and sometimes there isn't as much. And so with what information is available, looking at kind of their motivations and their intentions and what has kind of led them to do the work that they've done, I think that led to pretty interesting answers. And in the cases where there are those kind of like gaps of information and we don't know as much, I think we were finally given that opportunity to maybe fill in those gaps and see what these activists, elder activists, had to say, about their own work that maybe hasn't been documented yet. And that I think is something that is really valuable with this project, that we've been able to kind of fill in those gaps and things that we might not have known yet. And so, yeah, I think being able to kind of using the mixture of what's available and maybe what we didn't know yet, using that to kind of draw up what ideas were kind of consistent and that we saw again and again in their work, I think kind of drew us to what we thought, that North Star could be in kind of interviewing these folks. Yeah, thank you.
Tell me about, I guess, the idea that, tell me about your curiosity going in. How did you find things to connect to in your elders' stories?
So I think when I heard this question right now, it really made me think of Donald Foster specifically, because I actually lived in Afro House before. So I was like, oh, like, how did this come to be? Because I don't think a lot of people, certainly not a lot of people who even live there now know the history of it or like how it came to be. And it was really interesting because you would think that this would have been like such a hard thing to do. But like the way that he was explaining it, he was like, oh no, like they just had the money and they just told me yes. And like, we just got it. And I was like, oh wow. Like I had all these questions prepared about like, oh, what was the difficulty in that? But I think it's really also beautiful because you're able to like pivot when you're interviewing people and you can kind of like, ask them questions about like if their experience was different than you kind of anticipated it to be. And then I think also with Dr. Vicki Alexander, like seeing all the work that she did with like the Black maternal mortality rate, and like also thinking that, oh, I am also like a Black woman, right? So like also like personal identities connecting to the work that people are doing. And you see like, and I saw a lot of interviews from her online and like all the work she's done. And I think a lot of times it's really easy to like ask questions that have already been asked in these interviews. And so a method I kind of like tried to use was like, see like all the things that she answered with like, all her previous interviews and questions I had from her previous answers. Because I think it's also really important to be like intentional when doing work like this and making sure that like you're like being as productive as possible and producing things so people can continue to learn.
And then lastly, how did this experience change your approach to either activism or your pursuit in whatever respective field that you intend to go into?
That is such a great question. I think when we think of all of these people, like even what I said to introduce them was such an undercut of everything they did, right? Like they lived all these years every single day, right? And there's so much packed into that. And I think for me, what I really learned is that like there is so many different trajectories to life and you're gonna explore them all with an open mind. And that's really what I got from all of the elders I got to connect with, and also just to hear their actual feelings towards a lot of what happened. I think we try to intellectualize or separate from how folks are feeling in the moment of doing these, and being able to hear them retell these stories, seeing their emotion, seeing the passion, definitely had such an impact on me and how I am gonna further being an activist and going into being an elder as well, because I learned so much from them and how to be an elder, how to be an activist. And for my future life trajectory, just taking all those little bits of wisdom and experience with me and holding that as dear to my heart, and also revisiting it, going back into the actual archive and listening again for what they were doing in these times, because obviously history is going to repeat itself, so trying to take what they did and implement it and see where they messed up and what I could do different, or see where I'm messing up and I could do different. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially that point about like the circles in history repeating itself. There were some times y'all would get to the interview and they ask you, you have anything else to say? And y'all like, man, the world's really crazy right now. And I'm like, yeah. And y'all would talk about like the times in the 50s and 60s and describing such specific situations. But then I'm listening to it, I'm like, wow, you could say that literally yesterday. Or talking about a specific event or a specific war that's going on. And I'm like, wow, that's exactly how we're feeling or how we're processing, talking through these things today. So definitely want to thank y'all for those contributions. Now I want to pass the floor to any elder who would like to speak on their own experience being interviewed for this project. Not all at once, oh my gosh. Oh yes, please, Miss Daphne Muse.
I came to Berkeley in 1972 when the department was a toddler. and now it's grown-ass people doing amazing work. And for the last 3 years, I've served as the elder in residence. And let me tell you, you young people have taught me so much. I've had to rethink how I see the world, hear it, smell it, taste it, because it's so different. It really is. It's so different, although some things are the same, than it previously was. And this is not the robe, the mantle we wanted to leave you. This is not what we struggled so hard and fought so fiercely to pass on to you. And I wish we could have left you robes of glory. And in some ways, I think we have, but they're not large enough. So out of this work that I've done as the elder in residence has come a project called Old School plus New School equals Mo Better School. And Mo Better started last year, and we're gaining traction, and I'm going to be in touch with you all about it. So again, I am so honored that the department sought to charge me with the responsibility of being the elder in residence, and I hope I will continue to make this department proud, because you all have been tremendous, tremendous to me, and I could not have asked for better other than had we been liberated.
And I can walk the mic to you.
Okay.
I was really impressed. My interviewer is not here today, but I was so impressed by the level of knowledge and information that the person brought to the interview. So it was almost like I couldn't stop myself. I was, an activist for part of my life, but a journalist for most of my life. So I started asking her questions, where you come from, She's like 6 feet tall, and she's just beautiful. She's got a great big afro. Anyway, so the point is the intergenerational movement that took place, I think, in the interview was important in terms of learning on both sides. So that's one point I'd like to make. The other is, many people don't know this, but I started out teaching at Richmond College, which is a community college in New York City, but not a community, but it was a special community college. One thing that black people did in New York, they pushed through and had open admissions. That means that anybody who had a high school diploma had the right to go to a community college. Now, of course, they didn't have enough community colleges to go around, so they had a lot of building of them. Richmond College only had juniors, seniors, and graduate students, because that also was an experimental school in which they were having to after they built all these other community colleges, there were a lot of students coming in for higher education. And I learned a lot from that experience. One was the education that mostly black were getting was horrible. Can you believe that a student that had gone through a freshman year and then through a sophomore year came into my class, which was on women's history class, and she literally was functionally illiterate. So the whole question of just putting people through school but not teaching them anything was a problem that we were facing. And the administration was not that interested in opening up its arms to these students. They told us, Quincy Troop, who some of you may know if he's a big literary figure in the Black cultural arena, and he was teaching at Richmond College in the Black Studies department with me. And we got together and we said, why don't we get a class together in which we teach people to use the library? So we spent a lot of time on this thing, and which we called, techniques, research techniques 101. We took it to the administration, and the administration said, no, you can't teach that. These are supposed to be students that already have these skills. But we said, yeah, but some of them don't, and therefore, what are we going to do about it? They should have learned it before. So Quincy and I went back and we said, let's just fool around. We literally tinkered with the program, but we changed the title. We said advanced research techniques. It went through. So those are some of the just one little battle that we had at the academic level. And I told a lot of stories to the young lady, and she appreciated a lot of the stories. So that was one of my stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bill. Say your name.
Okay, my name is, there's 3 or 4 of them.
Okay. One is in the archive.
That I can remember? Okay. My name is Born Jimmy Garrett. I'm also known as James Garrett. Then there's Look at Him Run, and there's a whole bunch of names that I could have given. But I wanted to speak about this sister here who came to interview me. I'm at a stage where people kind of bring you out of the formaldehyde every once in a while, and just to test your mettle, trying to see whether or not you're. And as was pointed out earlier, this young person was very prepared, but she did something that was very important to me. I've been working on a kind of memoir for, I don't know, 15 or 20 years, and trying to connect things together. In our interview, she kept digging, and of course I tried to be in who I am. I'm digging back at her. Where you come from, where you get how you get those questions, because that's standard for organizers, is that we want to know everything. And so, but she opened up, and I just want to say this piece. I was trying to find a linchpin between one period of time and another, while in one I was involved with the Black Student Union and what became Black Studies at San Francisco State. But that wasn't the beginning and ending of my life. I had been involved in the movement from the sit-ins, the freedom rides. I'd been involved in work in LA during the uprising. So, and I was at the founding meetings of gatherings, really, of both Black Panther parties in Northern California. Black Panther Party for Self-Defense and the Black Panther Party for Northern California. So I had all this stuff that I could brag about and talk and this and that. But she raised with me some of the international issues that were going on. And what it reminded me of was that during that period, there were Mexican students in Mexico City were trying to build a movement that was left, that was radical, but free of the old kind of locked-in leftist debates that were going on. They ended up spending the same time that we were building our movement in the US around ultimately Black Power and the Black Panther Party and the US organization and all that. They were building their own movement. And I had a role. My role was to try to build a connection between our movement and theirs. And that this sister opened me up to that, reminded me of that. And I don't know if you know that in 10 days before the 1968 Olympics, a group of 4,000 young people marched the streets of Mexico City. And they were considered to be so dangerous by the State Department, the US State Department, and the Mexican government that they decided to kill them. They killed 1,000 of them. Those were people I had been working with. And I had so foreclosed that process, that time, that it just blew me up to have this sister ask the kinds of questions that brought that back to me. And so the memories, reaching in and grabbing some memories that I was trying to hide, this young sister here did that. So I give her all praises, all blessings.
Thank you so much. Miss Margaret, would you like to say something?
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Miss Margaret Gordon. I live in West Oakland, Lower Bottoms. All right, and I'm been in one spot for 30 years, and I went to a meeting about air quality, and I never left. That's the truth. I never left. I came in as a resident volunteer. Now I am one of the co-directors, and I've been there for over 25 years. One of my compadres over there, and doing environmental justice. So, but my story is that I was a house cleaner on welfare, taking care of 2 kids, struggling trying to go to San Francisco State back in the day when there was no child care. One of my many activism engagements was fighting to get child care for the women who had children want to go back to college. And I also participated in the child care development at Merritt College when there was none. But some kind of way, when I moved to West Oakland in 1992, I started working with a group of children doing a violence prevention project. And I would go meet the school nurse, and I would see shoe boxes with inhalers with pieces of tape on with kids' names on it. And I was trying to figure out, well, what's happening here that all these kids, this nurse has all these inhalers, because I have asthma also. But as I started digging deeper and started going to community meetings, I found out that West Oakland was a systematic air polluted place of mixed things because of redlining, because of where they have place-based stuff but as a built environment, 3 freeways, a port, numerous monster trucks running through the neighborhood, and I found my new passion. All right. I even had nerve enough to be a commissioner for the Port of Oakland for 5 years. They didn't know what they was getting into, and I definitely did not know what I was getting into. And one of the things I used to do as a commissioner, as I read through the agenda, and who supported me to be this first neighborhood-based board member was Ron Dellums. Ron Dellums have supported me as the mayor to be on that board. And one of the things I used to do was write notes to myself before I spoke, because I cuss. And I don't want to cuss out nobody, so I would write notes to myself before I made a statement or delivered a message or whatever. I always wrote a note to me. So people always, why are you writing? So I was telling them, because I cuss. And I was trying not to cuss people out. All right? So one of the things also I used to do to piss me off too bad, and I was going through menopause at that time, I had to get up, get my purse, go scream inside of it, wipe my sweat off my face, put me some makeup on, and go back to the meeting. I didn't leave. I would go back. So that's one of the things that we as women, if you're gonna be in this fight, you got to learn how to pick your battles, and when you do, have the good fight, because it will come back to you, and always be very clear on what your role is and how you're gonna do it, and also be able to tell people, back up off of me, back up off of me, all right? Because I'm not here for that, I'm here for this. So my role in West Oakland, and I'm in the organization that I am the founder of, it's called the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project. And one of the unique things about my organization, we work from research and data. We do all our work based on research. And that was very unique for an environmental justice organization, neighborhood-based, had researchers learn to count the indicators of those impacts inside of one neighborhood. And so I am, hopefully, I'm on my second generation of staff all these years of doing this work. But the thing about it is, it's not over. It's not over because we still have systematic placement and planning. We have systematic places of zoning. We still have systematic places of where exposure still is. So we still, this fight for just talking about climate change is still about climate justice. So I'm here about the justice. So thank y'all.
Maybe if we have one more. Okay. Oh, we'll do 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Okay. Oh, thank you, Mr. Foster.
All right,
Great.
thank you.
Great.
No, yeah.
Want me to hold it for you?
No,
You
okay.
got it. Okay.
My, yes, my name is Don Foster. I was surprised and honored to be selected to be a part of this. I was surprised because I really didn't feel as though I had done very much. But I do really believe, and I try to live by the idea that we all have the responsibility to do as much as we can with what we have to make this stuff better. I hope that came out in my interview, and that's basically it. Thank you.
Yes, it totally did, so thank you.
My name is Walter Turner, and it was quite an experience. I mean, most of the last 20 or 25 years, what I've done is to do interviews. So to be interviewed was certainly a different flavor. I produced a regular program on Africa, which I've done for many, many years. I'm honored and surprised to be here today because I'm a bit like my comrade here, Don Foster. I think, but when I look around the room and I see people like Dr. Garrett and Fran Beal and Linda Burnham, you should know that these people were relentless in the struggles. At San Francisco State, when we were in the battle for Black Studies, people like Dr. Garrett and many other people were out there every day, not just talking about Black Studies, but physically confronting the police. People went to jail for that. So when I see the people around, these were really people who, as Fred Hampton would say, dare to struggle, dare to win. They were going to fight to the last moment. And some of us, we see each other now, maybe we don't remember each other because we were working so much. We were side by side, particularly around issues like anti-apartheid. I'm honored today, especially because I continue to run a program which is called the Emoji Program for African American students at the College of Marin. And many of my students and staff are here today, and so I'm very, very honored. It's hard for me to step onto the Berkeley campus without remembering probably I actually went to Ghana and studied in Ghana through UC Berkeley, but the person who always sticks in my mind was Dr. Veve Clark, who was a close friend, went to Haiti with her to study Vodun, the agricultural systems. We traveled from Port-au-Prince up to Anse Rouge, up to Maison St. Nicolas. One evening we got in town and everybody rushed in and took a shower. And later that evening, the people from the community came and said, for the showers all of you 15 and 20 people have taken, you've exhausted all the water for this community for the next week and a half. So they gave us some buckets and we went out and we filled buckets again to resupply. But it was through Veve who, even after we came back from Haiti, set up a collective here where we studied and did research and we did data and all those type of things. So I'm proud to be here. I didn't know it would be like this when I walked in the door, but to be in the company of the people that I see here, alhamdulillah, I'm very, very respectful. Thank you so much.
My name is Talbert Small. I'd like to say hello to my friends, comrades, and former patients who are here. I'm not going to talk about myself, but I think I'll talk about one of my patients. Angela Davis and Huey Newton asked me to go visit George Jackson. I said, sure. I went out to the jail, San Quentin jail. Guy inspected my bags and walked me through the long trail to visit him in the adjustment center. There was Rochelle McGee sitting in the corner. He frowned at me, wanted to know whether I was an attorney. When I told him I wasn't an attorney, he smiled. They had George in a cage, which could be like a coffin, and I went in to examine him, and they didn't have an examining room, so I examined him on the desk, and we had a circle of guards standing around us. I don't know what for, but there must have been 8 or 9 guards around us, and George would point to, this one's in the John Birch Society. The guy who met you at the gate, he was in the John Birch Society. George bore the wounds of many a battle. They would gang beat him. He had a dent in his nose from being beaten. He actually wanted to see me about an ingrown toenail. He wanted to know if I could fix it on the spot. Of course I couldn't. So I arranged from George Roden, who you probably don't know his name, but he was a gold medalist in the 1952 Olympics in the 400 meters from Jamaica. He came out to see me, and unbeknownst to me, they did not let him see him. And then George told me, I realized that this wasn't a doctor you sent because he asked me, was I feeling any pain? I said, yes. Then he proceeded to cut on his toe. And they told George that they couldn't keep him in the infirmary because they thought he was a security risk. So they gave him some dirty socks to walk across the field back to his cell. They knew he was allergic to codeine, so they gave him codeine so that he could stay up all night vomiting. So rather than talk about myself, I thought I would talk about one of my patients, George Jackson. And I'm going to read a poem I wrote about George. The heroic gorilla. Scream, scream, scream about that man who threatened the fires of hell. Stalk forward, bronze dragon. Breathe pits of fire to melt the molten bars of slavery. Conquer concrete walls with courageous conviction. Teach us the art of raging, heroic gorilla. Steal my writings, resist we must. Steal my weapons, resist we must. Steal my life, resist we must. In your last hours, caged but unconquered, stand defiant before the jaws of death. Teach us to die as men, not as slaves, so that even after death, we may continue to resist. Steal my writings, resist we must. Steal my weapons, resist we must. Steal my life, resist we must. In your spirit of defiance, let's crawl over our slain heroes to tumble down those prison walls, stone by stone. Remember well, dragon slaver, truth will break the chains of death. I shall escape from the grave to dog your ever footsteps. 5 years have passed. 'Tis a pity. Your ideas still alive, lie dead in the hearts of your followers. Let's everybody say, long live the spirit of George Jackson. Amen. You know, my uncle used to tell us we had a job when we first got off the boat. Sure, we had a job when we first got off the boat. We also have been resisting ever since we got off the boat. And I would like, the name of my book is called Resistencia, and I like to close with a poem called Resistance. You may poison our wells, we will resist. You may break our bones, resist we must. You may bulldoze our homes, we will resist. We will resist to the last drop of our blood, once the seeds of freedom have been planted in blood. The winds of freedom will blow these seeds into your wicked heart. You may throw our bones into a barren desert. They will sprout forth a beautiful rose, whose vines will strangle the enemies of the sun, those who plunder, rape, and murder. You know, the greater the repression, the greater the resistance. And I think we will see that in Gaza. The greater the repression, the greater the resistance. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, yes.
Thank you. My name's Rodney Barnett, and I've been active since I've been a young man, but I'm really happy that I was able to be interviewed, and I'd like to thank Corey, too, for having an initial interview with me. I was in the Black Panther Party. The FBI conducted surveillance, harassment on me and my family and everybody else in the Panther Party. That was in Los Angeles. I opened up an office in Compton. The FBI has a file on me, 500-page file on me that shows the degree that they go to harass you, to drive you, and want you to kill yourself and everything else. So I'm so thankful that we're able to get information that I had about that out. And I'd like to thank my daughter, too, Sadie Barnett, who is an artist, who, when we were trying to get the FBI files, it took 5 years for us to get it. We had to pay for it. And from the very beginning, my daughter says, I'm going to make art out of this. I couldn't understand how she could do that, but she did. And so it started the curiosity of people like the interviewers up here and Corey. So I could go on and on, but thank you for that. I appreciate being here and being interviewed.
My name is Melanie Tervalon, and I'm just filled with so much emotion right now. To be in the presence of this room that is filled with elders and youngsters, where we can see that what has to happen, what has to continue is right here before us. We are here with each other in unity, in communion, and that there is so much work still to be done, and we will, and we'll do it together. I turned 70 2 years ago, and oh my God. And it has taken me these 2 years to realize, oh yes, I am an elder. It is true. And to be here and hear from my fellow revolutionaries, quite honestly, who in those days when we were together, and I look around, see y'all smiling right now, because, oh, those were good days. They were hard days. But we were with each other, and we were friends, and we supported each other. We took care of each other. And I just want to say how important that has always been at the base of what we are doing together. We are here to make peace. We are here to find liberation. We are here to be liberation. And a lot of that is about how we are with each other and how we do our organizing and how careful we are. As the young woman who interviewed me, who I want to go up there and hug because she was amazing, just amazing. This kind of recognition of the stages of development that we all have to go through. And so just to say I love you all. I love you all, and I feel in great solidarity with everyone in this room. And thank especially, I am going to do a little shout out here, to all the sisters in the Third World Women's Alliance, because yes indeed, because women hold up half the sky, we know that. And that's where, thank you. We hold it, almost all of it up. So, and to note, I want to say thank you to you, Bert, for sure. Thank you. I'm a doctor. You heard that before, and my interest in being a doctor is in no small part connected to working in the George Jackson Free Medical Clinic when I was really a baby, a youngster. Bert was the physician there, and he kind of took me under his wing and helped me understand what to do and what not to do, wrote a letter for me to go to medical school. I'm the person I am in no small part because of you and all the other people in the room, and I'm just so happy to be here, and thank you. Thank you.
Did I miss anyone? I want to make sure. Did all the folks who participated were able to say, is Linda back there? Linda's back here. Oh, Linda. I thought that was you.
Yeah, it's beautiful to be in this room. Rodney, I haven't seen you since. So thank you, Ula, for everything. And for bringing us together and for the opportunity to connect with folks from the way, way back and to all of you younger folk. I think the only thing I want to say is we faced a really difficult circumstances when we were organizing. I started organizing very early on. I'm a second generation in trying to figure out what to do with this damn country. But you all are facing more difficult circumstances. And so I just want to underline the fact that I'm still organizing. I'm 76, right? I'm working on trying to pull people together to have a deep conversation about how do we strengthen anti-fascist resistance in this country. So that's what I'm doing when I should be playing with my grandchild and working in my garden and doing my yoga. I do know how to retire. I do. But somehow this country hasn't let me do that, right? So I just want to underscore, looking forward, you all are in it for the long haul, right? And you are facing more difficult circumstances than we faced. You're facing authoritarians and fascists who are flexing their muscle every single day and who are ready to take this country back a long way. They do not have your interests at heart. So I want to say, number one, do everything you can. Think about every way you can, every connection you have that will help stop their role. I have many times in the last year and a half said, we are about building an anti-fascist alliance that goes from street fighting anarchists, which some of you may be, all the way over to anti-Trump generals, right? That has become more complicated since October 7th and its aftermath. It has only become more complicated. So, okay, wait, I'm lecturing. I'm just saying we're facing extraordinarily difficult circumstances, more difficult than the ones I have faced since I became a baby activist at 14 years old, right? So the only thing we can do, don't despair, do not despair, do not give up, face what we're facing, and do what you can do.
Thank you. I just want to also acknowledge that Mr. Phil Hutchins is in the house. Come on. Yes. Sina, you want to close it? So before we put closure, I want to introduce the Sina, who's the librarian here, and Sina's going to talk about how you all will be able to access these amazing interviews.
Whew. What an incredible, this is incredible. I don't know if we've had this many people in the library before, so thank you. So my name is Sina. I'm one of the librarians here, and I just want to let you know a little bit about what we're doing here and how you can come back. We are committed to always being open to the community. We're not going to be checking IDs or anything like that. So anyone is welcome through these doors. And at these computers, you can access everything that UC Berkeley is paying for. So come on in anytime. And we have tons of archives. We're trying to carry on the spirit of the Third World Liberation Front, which is what we grew out of, and just continue to keep the light on these histories, because we know that part of the fascist attack is on history itself, right? So keeping that evidence here and making it accessible is what we want to do. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe I should go this way so more people can see me. I just want to say something to all of the elders who were interviewed, and that is, thank you so much for responding to my emails. Okay. I know that I harassed some of you to the point where you just had to say yes. I handpicked each one of you because I wanted an eclectic representation of activists, whether an environmental activist like Ms. Martin Gordon, whether an activist dealing with disability and Afro House like Mr. Foster, like Dr. Tolbert Small, who had been a physician not only with the Black Panther Party, but also my auntie Mary Wooten. This is still my auntie Mary Wooten's doctor, okay? Yes, I know. And Miss Fran Beal, who I just love to pieces, as she knows. I'm actually working on Fran Beal's oral memoir, and hopefully we'll have a gathering here to celebrate that as well. So on behalf of the Department of African American Studies, thank you so very, very much for coming out. We're going to be in here another 45 minutes. We have food from Kingston 11. We want to offer you all a meal. And hopefully for the young people in here, please go around and talk to these elders and engage them about their experiences. And by the end of the year, you'll be able to go into the system here in the library, and you'll be able to listen to all of them independently on your own. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. And before we move to the food, and I know in between you and the foods, I'm only going to take a moment, but we do want to acknowledge, when I said in the beginning this is a community only Professor Taylor could bring together, that's exactly what I meant. And so if we can all once again thank Professor Taylor. Thank you.
I do want to say Professor Taylor kept us all on track the entire year.
And I want to thank our intergenerational translator, Corey Rose, yes, Corey Antonio Rose.
Yes,
thank you so
totally,
much.
totally.
Right. And
you,
Saina, the librarian.
Yes,
Saina! Woo-hoo! Yes, and I just want to amplify, do not despair. And for all the elders in the room, I've been so moved. I know so many of us are so moved. And Ms. Muse, what you said, you have left us more than you know and all that we need. Yeah. That is that's our inheritance from our elders. So thank you. Thank you all.
You know, in each point in history, you have to pick what is the key struggle. And today, each of us have been witnessing the slaughter of men, women, children, and the whole citizen population in Gaza. And today, everything that you can do to make our government stop sending those bombs over there, you should do. With other international groups, there are, Jimmy and I were talking about this, and we said, we have never in our life seen a worldwide movement like the Palestine movement around the world. And I just felt that we couldn't end this gathering without a moment of reflection on what is happening in Palestine and what we can do about it. Thank you.